Good morning, Rabbi Isai. What do we have yesterday? We had two brises that contradicted each other. Brisa number one says that tzitz that the Kohen Gadol wears on his forehead doesn't have the power to forgive, to allow a carbon that the person through the blood b'mezid, the yachid, the b'mezid, and the other one says that tzitz is meratza mezid. So he said that brisa, one brisa is Rebbe Eliezer, the other is Chachamim. That's where we're holding. Even Shabbos Rebbe Eliezer the meratza tzitz al achilos. Where did you see that Rebbe Eliezer doesn't give a knas at all? In the Shabbos Rebbe Yosi, Shabbos Rebbe Eliezer, we're smack in the middle of a sugya. So when we find that Rebbe Yosi doesn't give any penalty at all when it comes to truma, so too Rebbe Eliezer. V'sanyo Rebbe Eliezer a bein b'shogeg bein b'mezid truma. Here we go. So you see this idea that there's no, if a person, he shouldn't take truma, he shouldn't give the kayin the 2% from the tummy stuff. Why? Because that hurts the kayin. But if he does, it works. And Memela, everything goes fine. We'll say it goes like Rebbe Eliezer. We have a contradiction. The brises, okay, it's not a contradiction. One brise goes like Rebbe Eliezer, one goes like Chacham. Aim at the Shabbos Rebbe Eliezer, betruma the kila. I see, okay, maybe Rebbe Eliezer only said his thing by truma where there's no knas. Why? Because it's something lighter. But we know the kachim, the Beis Hamikdash, it's a lot more severe. Maybe Rebbe Eliezer doesn't say his thing there. It says Gemara Imkain Haman Tirmiya. So who are you going to throw it at? It has to be. We don't have anybody else. Nobody else is in the lineup. So the only person available is Rebbe Eliezer. Ravina. Here again, we have a contradiction. The two brises. One says tzitz is meratza mezid, one says tzitz is not meratza mezid. What do? Says Ravina, very simple. There's two steps in the whole process. There's when you make the blood tameh, and then when you sprinkle the blood. There's two different things. So he says, if you put your hand in the blood, you took a rat, you put it in the blood, and you did it on purpose, then the tzitz will be meratza. That's step one. Because step one was deliberate, the tzitz will work. But the more important step of sprinkling the blood, that you cannot use blood that's tameh on purpose. Then the tzitz won't be meratza. Nafkamina of when it became tameh and when you sprinkle it. As you can see over here, the brisa that says that the tzitz is not meratza, that's talking about the second step. Step two, when you sprinkle the blood. But step one, I just put a 1 and a 2 to make it more, in my mind, 1 and 2. In the beginning, when you see the blood, and you walk over the blood and you touch the blood, that if you did it on purpose, we're going to forgive it. If later on you do it b'shagig, if you sprinkle the blood b'shagig. So, inside, Ravin Omar Tumasai, when it became tameh the blood, b'shagig b'mezid hurtza. Zrikasai, but when you sprinkle it, b'shagig hurtza, b'mezid loy hurtza. That you cannot do deliberately when you throw it. V'Rav Shila Omar, the exact opposite. Take a look. Boom. Do this one. That didn't fall in place so well. But okay. The opposite. Zrikasai, b'shagig b'mezid hurtza. The second step of Zrikas Hadam, when you sprinkle the blood, if you did it deliberately, then the tzitz does give you a kapar. That's it. But don't start off on the wrong foot. If you went and you took a rat and you put it into the bowl of blood and you made it tameh deliberately, tzitz is not going to help you out. Shila Omar Zrikasai bein b'shagig bein b'mezid hurtza. So when you do the zrika, step 2 of throwing the blood, you could even do it deliberately, and the tzitz has superpowers to overcome that. To Masai, but the initial step of making a tameh b'shagig hurtza b'mezid lo hurtza, and the story. Rav Shila Hadik Tani Shenitma bein b'shagig b'mezid. Brisa number 2. So look. Brisa number 2 on the left. We're talking about zrika, but it says mefurish Shenitma, which seems like what we said. We touched up brisa number 1. Not talking about zrika. We're talking about that it became tameh. Says the Gemara, and I found that today's daf has a few of these. Doichaks, like, kind of like, Hachi ka'amar, this is what he really meant. Let's count them even. Nitma b'shoigeg uzrakoi, you have to stick in a word. And he sprinkled it, bein b'shoigeg, bein b'mezid. Yeah, no, we're talking about zrika, we're not talking about nitma. Okay. Daf chavav. Tashma adam shenitma uzrakoi. Another question. In Braisa number 1, it says that the blood was tamei, and then it says uzrakoi. You said Braisa number 1 is talking about tuma, and all of a sudden over here it says uzrakoi. Like you explained Braisa number 2 zrika. Really, Braisa number 1 is talking about zrika. B'shoy yehurtza b'mezid lehurtza. Hachi ka'amar. Another one. Dam shenitma uzrakoi bein b'shoy b'mezid. Nitma b'shoy yehurtza b'mezid lehurtza. In other words, zrika, even if it's b'mezid, is okay. Fine. Says the Mishnah. So how does it work? You take the kmitza out of the mincha, you put the kmitza on the mizbeach, and then you get to eat the shirayim. What happens if there's no shirayim? No shirayim. Can you put the kmitza, or they depend on each other? Can you put a kmitza on a mizbeach when there's no shirayim? What happened to the shirayim? One of three things. Nitmo shirel, nisrfu shirel, other shirel. Either the shirayim became tamei, so they're right here in front of us, but you can't do anything halachically with it, or they were completely destroyed, or they were lost. So we have a machlokes. Kemidas Rebbe Eliezer Kshero, Kemidas Rebbe Yeshua Psula. What does Kemidas mean? We have a similar machlokes, Rebbe Eliezer and Rebbe Yeshua elsewhere. Can you perform zrikas hadam when there's no meat? Same exact thing. Can you be makter the koimetz? Can you put the kmitza on the mizbech if there's no dough, no flour? Can you sprinkle blood on the mizbech when the meat disappeared? Here, the pasuk says, "V'sisa ilasecha habasar v'hadam." So it seems like they're connected. You need basar. In order to have dam, you need basar. Here's the dam, and you could sprinkle the blood if there's meat. That yes, but what happens if the meat disappears somehow? I don't know how. It got destroyed. Then it goes from mutter to machlokes. What is that called? Ein basar, ein dam. If there's no basar, no dam. Fine. According to one man. So Kemidas Rebbe Eliezer, just like the Rebbe Eliezer says by the meat and the blood, that if the meat disappears, you can still sprinkle the blood. So he says over here, if the shirayim disappears, you can still put the kmitza on the mizbech. Kemidas Rebbe Shua. And on the flip side, Shua, who holds by meat, psula, that you cannot throw the blood if there's no meat. You need meat. Ein basar, ein dam, he holds. So over here also, ein shirayim, ein kmitza. Same idea. Omer Rav, v'hu shenitmu kol shirel. So we had three things in the Mishnah. It became tamei, it got burnt and it got lost. He says, referring to the tamei, the only time you can't put it on the mizbech is if 100% of the shirayim became tamei. So the kmitza has nothing to work with. It's not coming to be mat or anything. So then you can't put it on. I have a mix of shirel, but if there's even a small amount of shirayim left over, that's okay. Nitma ein over the serve light. How come he mentions the word? How come Rav says only the word tamei? There's three cases in the Mishnah and he only brings one. The answer is he meant all three, but he brought the first one in the Mishnah as just an example. And for that we have to wait a minute. That makes no sense. Why? Michael Savar, what does he hold? If you have a little piece left over, that's enough. You don't need the full shirayim. So then, so then what's the difference? Tamei or got lost or got burned? If 90% got burned and there's 10% left, you have 10% left. What's the problem? And if 10% is not enough, so then why, if it becomes tamei, is it okay? So what are you going to say? Because the meratzit sits. Because tumah is special. You have the ritzu, the tzitz has superpowers on tumah. So then why does Rav say that if the entire thing, it's only when the entire shirayim became tamei? There's a difference between the entire thing and 90%. Why is there a difference? The tzitz should have the superpowers that overcome even a full tumah. The truth is that when you have 10% left, it's fine. Rav was going on all three cases. There's no nafkamina. Your question is a great question, and it just comes to prove that Rav meant all three cases, that if 90% got lost, 10% remains, 90% got burnt, 10% remains, it's fine, you can do the aktara of the community. Why did he say nitma? He grabbed the first case. What are we trying to prove here? That if you have some of the shuraim left over, you can put it on the mizbeach. Or boy's side, this is a freebie because we had it exactly 2 weeks ago. Every word. When we're talking about whether you have enough meat to do the zrika, even if you have one kezayis of the animal, 99% of the animal went five, but one kezayis is left over, I could throw the blood on the mizbeach. Not only that, or kezayis chaylev, even a part of the fats that go on the mizbeach. What's the difference? Basar is edible for human consumption, and chaylev is for the mizbeach's consumption. But they're different. One is for humans, one is for the mizbeach, for the Rebbeinu Shalom. So meila kechatzi zayis basar kechatzi zayis chaylev, you cannot combine the two. You can't say, oh, I have a half a kezayis of meat that's steak, and I have a kezayis of chaylev, and put them together to have a full kezayis. No, in a zarek kezadam, you cannot throw the blood because they don't combine. One is for humans and one is for the mizbeach. However, ba'oila avilu kechatzi zayis basar kechatzi zayis chaylev zarek kezadam. The oila, you could combine the two. Why? Because the entire thing goes on the mizbeach. There's zero nafkamina between. There's no steak and there's no chaylev. It's all one. It's all kulil Hashem. So you take a half a kezayis of what should have been a steak, but it's not. It goes on the mizbeach, and a half a kezayis of fat. It goes on the mizbeach. It combines for a kezayis, and then you can do zrikas adam, zrikas adam. Mipnei shekula kol, because it all gets burnt. The bottom line is, you see that if you have a little piece left over, even a kezayis, you do zrikas adam, great raya. Or b'mincha, this is wow, what's going on here? And if you have a mincha, afilu kula kayemes le'izroi, you shouldn't throw the blood even if the entire mincha is left over. Mincha mayavita, what are you talking about? Where's the zrikas adam on a mincha? Mincha is made out of flour, not out of blood. Omar papa, mincha is the sagim. We're talking about a shlamim or an oila. So let's take a shlamim. You have a shlamim. How do you bring a shlamim? You bring a shlamim together with the wine, together with a mincha. In the mincha, you put some oil, and then the shlamim went bye-bye. It disappeared. So, can I throw the blood of the shlamim? Well, I have a whole bowl of a mincha, which goes together with the shlamim. So why shouldn't I be able to throw the blood? It's together. They come together. It's part of the same carbon. So maybe I should be able to throw the blood based on the fact that I still have leftover flour. No, you need leftover meat, not flour. Okay. How do I know that you need a kezayis, that a kezayis of fat is good enough? Now, there's different things. Let me ask you. If you have a kezayis of a kidney left over, can you do zrikas adam? Kezayis of a kidney. Kezayis of fat. I don't know what. Could you do zrikas adam? The answer is yes. So the Gemara goes through it real quickly.
Kezayis of chaylev is left over.
What did I say?
Kezayis of meat.
I said fat, no? Fat. Fat, chaylev. Maybe because it's not basar. Mishum Rabbi Shmuel, u'mataba Mishum Rabbi Shmuel ben Chananya. It says a basar adam. Chaylev is not basar. Oh, it says chaylev. The whole pasuk is talking about zrikas adam. The pasuk goes like this: V'zarek ha'koyenes adam. He throws the blood. V'hikter ha'chaylev. So you see that zrikas adam has to do with chaylev. If you have a kezayis of chaylev, it's good. L'reich nechaylev shem. Chaylev avavi shein basar. Even though there's no meat left over. V'ashkon chaylev. Yoseres ushtei ha'klois menolan. How do you know that the skirt steak, that diaphragm that divides the body of the animal, mamish, it's like a wall between the lungs and the heart. Diktani, because I'll prove it to you. It says that if you have flour left over, you cannot do zrika. Mashma, anything else but flour, you could. But how do I know it from the pasuk? Anything that gives a good fragrance, anything that you put on the mizbeach, including a kidney, it gives you the ability to do zrikas adam. And I need the two things. Simple tzrichusa here. I need those two words. Because of chaylev, it only said chaylev and not reich l'choyach. In Yisrael, I needed to tell me that kidneys and a diaphragm, which is geschmack and meat today, yeah, that's a skirt steak. People like it, including myself. Is meat. Because Rahman reich l'choyach. Because Rahman reich l'choyach, we only say reich l'choyach. I would think anything that brings fragrance. In other words, even flour. No, flour doesn't count because Rahman chaylev, it has to be fatty, it has to be meaty. It cannot be a reich l'choyach that comes from cake, from flour. Rabbi Isai, this is Mendy Auerbach's favorite video, so we'll watch it again. L'chvayid Mendy Auerbach. Not mamish, but you know, the whole process of a mincha. Taking a sar and flour out of a kli sharis. So that, well, no, not that one. This is a kli sharis. Pour it. No, this one right here. Pour the oil into kli sharis, pour the flour into kli sharis, and you put another layer of oil. 2 layers of oil, you do blila. That bowl that he's doing the blila in is a kli sharis. Fine. So it gives it gedusha. This is, I wish I could fast forward a little bit. So now he's baking it. And what does he have to do now? Now he has to break it up into pieces. He has to do petitim from this, because it's a certain type of mincha. He petitim with. No. Not necessarily. Now this is called Yitzika. 3rd time of oil. Now this is called Hagasha. He puts the touches in his back. Southwest corner. There's Levine over there. The frankincense. Put the Levine in. Now you have to move the Levine to the side. Before you do kmitza, you have to move the Levine to the side. And now he's going to do kmitza from this type of bread. Sometimes it's from flour, sometimes from doing kmitza now. Now he puts it in, this is what I wanted to show you. He puts in another kli sharis, and that gives it added kedusha. It goes up in the level of kedusha, that second kli. Then he puts salt, and we're pretty much done here. Now he's going to do aktara. There's one step after this. What do you do after aktara? Yeah. You get to eat the shirayim. Look at them go like this with their head. The nuances. Anyway. So, I don't know if you can bring herring into Beis Hamikdash. It's a chulin. Here's the question. That step, everybody agrees that the mincha is done in a kli sharis. The initial part is a kli sharis. Everybody agrees that the going to the mizbeach part, you don't need a kli sharis. The question is, the middle step, that second kli sharis, is it necessary or not necessary? So it says the Mishnah, and that's even in Reb Shimon the question. We'll see in a second. Shaloi b'kli sharis pasul, says the Tanakama, that if you take the kmitza, step 2, here, like he already did something just for that, it's kind of strange. Like it looks like his hand, AI, like it looks like it's going right through the marble. Look, he took the kmitza and he didn't put it in a second vessel. He took it directly from his hand onto the mizbeach. Says the Mishnah, pasul. Rebbe Shimon machshir. Rebbe Shimon says it's kosher. We're going to see 3 shitas in Rebbe Shimon itself, what he meant exactly. After you took the kmitza, you have it in your hand, you put it down, you take a knife, you chop it in half, and you take 1 half and put it on the mizbeach. Then you take another half and put it on the mizbeach. The kmitza was done 100%. But you makter it in 2 times, ksheira. What about if you makter it 4 times? The Mishnah says if you makter it twice. What if you cut it up into 4 pieces? Is that okay? Oh, so we have machloik is whether or not it has to be kazais or not. That's why it says, Hamay. Or maybe the Reb Chia. My time is Reb Shimon. Why does Reb Shimon say it's kosher? Or my krok kodesh kedoshim hi kechatas v'chasham. Also, freebie. We had this a number of times. B'la'ov de biyad, ov de biyamin kechatas. If you want to use your hand, you must use your right hand just like a chatas. Says Rabbi Yehuda b'Rei Reb Chia. So we need to see this here. Says Rabbi Yehuda b'Rei Reb Chia in Reb Shimon, you need a right hand. If you're going to use your hand, it has to be right. If you're using a vessel, then it can be even to the left. But clearly you have to be small. Kashuk. What's a chatas? Let's just show this real quickly. Brand new for today. I didn't like the size of the keren, but that's okay. There's only one carbon that you apply the blood by hand. Other carbonates you take, you sprinkle it with a kli. The chatas, you take it, you smear it on the corner with your hand. That's, if you want to do it with your hand, you have to use it right. You want to use a kli, then you're doing it like a asham. Here, asham, boom. That's Avremi, I think. He does it with his right hand. Great. Rabbi Yanai, what?
Correct. Even with the left. Even with the left.
Oh, even the left, and that is right over here with the left. With the left. Use it with the left. Great. Kasha. But Bayad, you do it with your right. Rabbi Yanai Omar Kimin Shekumatza. He comes Rabbi Yanai, he says, Kimin Shekumatza mikli shares ma'aleu maktir afilu behem yanai. Check this out, just so we're on the same page over here. Rabbi Yanai says that according to Rabbi Shimon, you don't need a kli. You don't need you don't need anything. You could even use your belt. There's the belt. You could put it in your belt and walk around with it. I feel like you could even use earthenware. No. He says no such thing. Everybody agrees that step 2, you need a kli. Here, as you see, Mamish, he did it great. You can see in picture number 1 on the all the way on the right, he's holding with his right hand because he's using his hand, has to be right. The kli is holding the left. The Rabbi Yanai says you could even use, you don't need a kli, you don't need anything, you use your belt, and he should have had the belt picture there. And Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak says, you can see over here, you need a kli, you need to put it in a kli. The second step, the kmitza, after you do the kmitza, you put it in a kli. Meisvei, I have a question on the first shita, on Rabbi Yehuda Reb Chia, that says that if you do it with your hand, it has to be in the right hand. Okay, that's not so important to us. It's not the question. You put the chalavim, the ivarim, all the stuff you put on the mizbeach, eitzim, and you could do it with your left hand. Hakoymet, that's for us. That's what we're talking about. Doing kmitza, vak toires, v'halavayna, the frankincense. Shalom, bein biyad, bein bikli, bein biyamin, bein bismail. What does Rabbi Yehuda say? With your hand, it needs to be biyamin. Over here it says, it could be with your left hand. Bein biyad, bein bismail. It says mafurish, yad small. Cherin is great. Do the Rabbi Yehuda v'chiyah. No, you didn't read it well. This is what it says. It's bein biyad, bein bikli. Whether you do it with your hand or with a vessel, bein biyamin, bein bismal. Guess what? Bein biyamin, bein bismal goes on the word kli. With a kli, you can do bismal. But biyad, you need min. Here, take a look at the chart for a second. Just the when it comes to yad, the last part of the sentence, biyamin, or bismal, is referring to the last word in the sentence, the word that comes before. The kli is biyamin and bismal. Toshma, it says mafurish, k'matzoi. This is a question of Rav Nachman. What does Rav Nachman say? Let's go back to the chart. Rav Nachman says you need a vessel. So we're going to have a couple questions on him. K'matzoi shaloi b'kli sharis. You didn't do a kli sharis all the way in the beginning. Or you didn't the kitchen shaloi b'kli sharis, the gars, or they make it one sentence.
And they take out the shaloi.
They take out the shaloi. Depends what Gemara you're using. I'm saying they use the Hagos Tzionim. V'hela v'ktir shaloi b'kli sharis. You didn't use a kli sharis for anything? Possible. Lazar Rishim machshirin. B'matan kli. They say, step 2, you don't need a kli. They don't need a kli. You can use a plastic vessel. You can put it in a paper cup, in a plastic cup. But Rav Nachman says, what does Rav Nachman say again? You need a kli. Here it is. Tzarech kli. It's a kash of Rav Nachman. Eima mimatan kli ve'elach. What is that? Teichak number 4. We had one on the bottom, one on the top, one before the Zdadim, now this, 4. It's referring to from when, after you did the kmitza, you put it into a kli sharis. Step 2, you took it out of the kli sharis and you went from there. What avodas are we talking about now? What avodas are we talking about? He already did the kmitza. He already put into kli sharis. What comes after that? Hoylacha and haktara. Says Rashi. Those two you don't need a kli sharis. Tashma. Chachamim say to do the kmitza, you got to put it into kli sharis. You're doing the kmitza from a vessel that's kadosh, and you put it and you add another kedusha in the second kli. And even the whole hoylacha and aktar all has to be from a kli sharis. Rav Shimon Baichai says, when you, as long as you do the kmitza, what's a question on who? On Rav Nachman, who says you need a kli. Rav Shimon says, once you do the kmitza from a kli sharis, you're done. You don't have to put it step 2 in a kli. What does Rav Nachman say? You have to do step 2, put in a kli. It's a kasha. Emo, maybe you could say, like the fifth one, he sticks in another word. No, that there was a step 2. After step 2, then you don't need a kli sharis. Toshma, he did kmitza with his right hand. And where did he put it in? In his left. Now, this is neget to us, because if you have to put it into kli sharis, then putting it in the left hand would be a big no-no. You put it in his left hand without a kli. No kli at all. What should you do? There's a way out of it. Put it back into your right hand. What if you put it in your left hand and you started having different thoughts of pigul? It's not a real pigul. Why? Because it's in the left hand. Now, if he put it in his right hand, you have to stick in the word. If it's in his right, if it's in your right hand, then it's kares. The Rebbe Elazar, Rebbe Shimon. Where? Where is it? I said that. I said. Once you put it into the left hand, it's all over. Why do they say you can't put it in the left hand? If you put it in the left hand, there's no way out of it, because you have to be mekadosh in the second kli. The kivin shenasan is small, and once you put it into the left hand, it was a little tricky in Zvachim. It was simple. We got it at the end, but we had that if the blood falls on the floor, you cannot pick it up and do zrika. But if the blood was in a kli and then fell on the floor, then you could grab it up like you do on Pesach. You take one scoop of blood from all the bloods and you do a akol panim. It says that if it fell on the floor, you can't. It's possible. Miklal, the Rebbe Elazar, Rebbe Shimon, loy matan kli. Rebbe Elazar they say that it's not possible. If you put the kmitz in the left hand, why? Because you don't need a kli at all. To Yufta, the Rav Nachman says you need a kli, and over here you see you don't need a kli. To Yufta, it's a bomb question. What does Rebbe Yehuda say on the chart? That you need a right hand. So it's great. Why? Because it says that you have to put it back in your right hand. The Rabbi Yana says you could even use your belt. Why do you have to put it back in your right hand? You could even use a belt. You don't need any kli. Tiyufta. It's a good question. Rabbi Yana can say, I know the Amri Ketana the Hector. If you remember, very simple. We did a whole shtick over here that when it comes to kli, you need to use right and left, even left. When it comes to your hand, left is no good, only right. But that was like tzdadim. He says, no tzdadim. I'm reading the brisa as is. When it comes to your hand, you could even use the left. Bein biyad, bein b'kli, bein biyamin, bein b'smol. Yamin and small goes also in yad. Before we said, our pshat was, when it comes to hand, it's only yamin. It says in the brisa yamin and small. No, that's going on the second words. He says, no, I don't like that. That's a tchak. That's l'tzdadim. I'm going for real. What it says, like you and I would read it. If you use your hand or a kli, you can use the right and the left. So it's not a question on me. I go like this Tana that says you can use your left. I don't know not active. Great. The Chavav Beis. We're holding like already 12 lines now. It says in the Mishnah that if you take a kmitza from the bowl and then you cut it in half and you put it on the mizbeach, it's good. You can't chop that into two. You can't have 4 pieces. You can only have 2 pieces. Why? as you guys said, you're mechaven. Rabbi Yochanan Omar pamayim v'afilo pamay pamayim. And Rabbi Yochanan says, no, as many pieces you want. You can have 20 pieces put on the mizbeach 20 times in a row. My benayu. Is there a minimum of how much the kmitza must be? And the big shaila is how much do you need to put onto the mizbech at any given time? So in other words, again, is there a minimum how much must be contained in my hand? A, he says yes, there's a minimum, 2 kizesim. Second of all, every time I put on the mizbech, it must be 1 zayis. Memela, there's a minimum. It has to be 2. You can't chop it up into 4 pieces. You chop it into 4 pieces. The pieces are too small. You can't put it on his back. Guess what? This is how we pass it. So it comes out a big, big thing here. Rabbi Yochanan Sova yesh koyim tzpachos b'shnei zayis. Yesh aktar b'chos b'shnei zayis. So Rabbi Yochanan, no, there's no shear. So I can chop it up in 20 pieces, put it on, and as much as I want. Check this out. The halacha is you must contain in your hand at least 2 kizaysim. Says the stipler that no one in our generation has a hand large enough to hold the 2 kizaysim of that time. And the Yerushalmi says that if you cannot hold 2 kizaysim in your hand, you're puzzle for avodah. And the machlokes Rishonim what the Yerushalmi means. Does he mean any avodah at all, or just avodah of kmitza? So it comes out according to the Rishonim that say that you're puzzle for all avodas. So there's nobody alive today that could do kmitza unless you are a Mari, but he's not a Kohen. Okay, Itmar. Rabbi, it's a simple sugya. Think about it. You take the kmitza, you put it on the mizbeach, you get to eat the shirayim. Do you have to wait 5 minutes? Could you eat it immediately? Rabbi Chanina Oimer, Mishimoshla boy, as soon, the millisecond that it touches the fire, boom, you can eat it. Rabbi Chanina Oimer, Mishitatis boy, Saor, Beruboy, no, it has to grab most of it, 51%. Rabbi Chanina Oimer, Mishimoshla boy, Saor, Rabbi Yochanan, Mishitatis boy, Saor, Beruboy, you need 51%. I'll prove it to you. On Makro, it says by Zdoim, Vina Allah Kitar Aretz Kikitar Kivshon. There was a great amount of smoke, and Kivshon Malakitar. When does the furnace give a bunch of smoke? When you have a majority of fire. Things that are usually put on the mizbeach at night. Shemalim aktirim. You could put an oila at night. You could put the ivarim at night. Shemalim aktirim miboya shemesh. Miboya shemesh means after shkia. Umisaklim ba'oichim kol halayla kula, and it goes and it gets eaten up the entire night. Dvarim shedarkim likar bayom. You hear this? Things that are usually done during the day. Kigoin. You put the kmitza during the day. Malavayna. Baktoiris. Umenchas koyhana. Umenchas koy meshuach. Usually it says Mashiach. Over it says meshuach. And all of a sudden it switches the language. You put it after Shkia. It just said it's something you put in the day. Elo. So the Gemara, how do you know that it's allowed? You're allowed to let it there be all night. One extra word. As the Gemara of if you're putting it on, we just explained, sorry. Elo and Boya Shemesh means, let's go back 10 seconds, a second before Shkia you put it on. You can't put it on after, you put it right before Shkia. In Boya Shemesh, that's why I said the joke, it's right before Shkia. As the Gemara, but if you're putting on a moment before Shkia, how is it going to grab the entire animal? How is it going to grab 51%? You know, like sometimes, I don't know, like if you give in, like, let's say your tax returns, just an example, you give in some, then you could later on send them documents or whatever. As long as you're like, you have to be in the game. You have to be in the system at a certain time, and then once it, so you put it onto the Mizbeach, boom. Okay, then what happens after? What? You have to go a second before Shkia, like you wash your hands before Shal Shudas. That's a good example. Right before Shkia, you wash, and then you're able to eat Shal Shudas. But if you want to eat it, then it has to be completely done. Like kan likloi, just to grab it, okay, that's right before. Kan lahatir, but if to eat the whole shirayim, it has to be 51% eaten. We're talking about the famous halacha called poikim. So I'm just going to skip to here real quickly. Poikim means if something flies off the mizbeach from the heat. So that you're allowed to put back on. That's what we're talking about. Yes, it's after Shkia, but you're allowed to put it back on because it's already on the Mizbech. It flew off. If you notice, it's talking about the things that flew off. But 10 lines earlier, 8 lines earlier, it says, one of the things is K'toris. As the Gemara, I'm just going to read it. Something that falls off from an oilo, you put back on. You can't get back on because you're K'toris. You don't put back the K'toris. And it says in the Brisa, one of the three things I'm going to read, I can't read it. Where is it? Oh, one of the things is K'toris. It says Gemara, Samimi kan K'toris. Take the word out. Stop right there. K'toris doesn't apply. Have a wonderful day.
Merit the schus of spreading Torah throughout the world. Sponsor a shir today. MDYsponsor.com or sponsor at MDY.com.